Welcome to another episode of Cleaning Up the Profits, dishing the dirt on cleaning business success, where we talk with real cleaning business owners and industry experts about what it takes to make it in the competitive world of professional cleaning.
Welcome to another episode of Cleaning Up the Profits, where we dish the dirt on what it takes to succeed in the cleaning world. I'm your host, Melissa Homer, Chief Cleaning Officer of Microfiber Wholesale. I'm a 20-year industry expert who has the honor of interviewing our guests, who are a mixture of cleaning business owners and fellow industry experts, who come from a diverse background of business sizes and years of tenure, but the one thing they have in common is they've built their expertise the real way, in the trenches. So they are coming to you with real-world wisdom that you can act on today. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to our guest today, and you guys are in for a real treat. I've been lovingly calling him behind the scenes the Tom Brady of healthcare. We are dealing with an expert that has been in the professional healthcare industry for decades and truly knows his stuff. So you're going to have a lot of fun. And he's also just one of the nicest people I've ever gotten a chance to interview so far. So you're in for a treat. Darrell, would you be so kind as to introduce yourself and tell everybody, why you're here?
Sure, Melissa. Thank you for the privilege of being with you today. And so I started my career back in 1981, and so over 40 years ago. And it was kind of a midlife desperate situation that I got into with being out of a job, and somebody from our church worked for a company called Service Master. And back then, they were doing contract management in hospitals and providing that service for hospitals. And I got into the cleaning side of things, housekeeping, as we used to call it. And I was recruited by someone from our church, but I was married with 3 kids, and right away we moved from St. Louis. After I finished my 8 weeks of training, we moved to Des Moines, Iowa, and had to be there for one of the coldest winters in 100 years, one of those things. But anyway, I was able to get into hospitals, and one of the things that drew me to it was, having this servant's heart, sort of, and I saw it as a way. It's kind of a side benefit of what we do is the service that we provide, and providing safe, clean, and disinfected areas for the public. And in my case, it was in hospitals. And so that was how I got started, and wound up moving from there to Kansas City area, and then back home to St. Louis. And so one of the things that Service Master does, which I believe in, is that when you start off as a manager, you learn every job that you are going to be managing. So for 8 weeks, I started off cleaning patient rooms. And it's funny, the first day that I was there, you're there to impress them that you're, suit and tie, and, they expected you to wear a jacket and, be presentable as a professional. And so this elderly black lady was teaching me how to clean patient rooms. We got to the bathroom, the restroom, and she told me what I was going to be doing, using a Johnny mop to clean the inside of the toilet. And she told me how to do it, and then it was my turn. So as I bent over to swab out the toilet, I dipped my necktie in the water, and she just cracked up. She said, "I get you guys every time." But she was just waiting for that punchline, and she and I got along famously well. And the people that we have in our business are just salt of the earth, and they may not have the depth of education, but they are smart people. And I just enjoy being around them and learning from them as much as they learn from me.
That's Awesome. And, I'm going to make you brag just for a second because I know that's not your nature, but you got a bunch of ABC soup behind your name that you did not name drop yet, or the fact that you're a president of, give me some of the street cred. Come on. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Well, this is a president's ring, and it was when I was president of the IEHA, which is the International Executive Housekeepers Association, for 2 years, 2006 to 2008. We had about 3,500 members at the time. And so it was an honor for me to serve in that position, but also was the president of the the Healthcare Surfaces Institute, and so it's about surfaces, and if we don't buy surfaces to begin with that are cleanable, we shouldn't buy anything that's not cleanable, and we shouldn't. What I always say is the housekeeper's got one disinfectant on their cart, she's got one cleaner, and so rather than trying to say, well, on this you use this product and on this you use a different product, we should be buying things that can be cleaned and serviced without trying to figure out what we should be using on the surface. Now, I realize some of your listeners may be into the high-end sort of finishes, but that takes some finding out exactly what it is that you can use on it. But anyway, that, and I did finally finish my bachelor's degree when I was working for Service Master. I was in the Army Reserves and 3 kids, and but I stuck with it and finished my bachelor's degree, and it took me, probably about 12 years after high school. But so I feel proud of that. I was the first in my family to get a college degree, and so that, in addition to some of the certifications that I have, and one is a certified master in infection prevention, and so it's about disease transmission, and I think that is one thing that all cleaners ought to know, all cleaning professionals ought to know, is how things get passed around. And surfaces play a big role in that transmission of disease from one person to the next. But anyway, so I think that, beyond all the different bugs that we have to worry about out there, it's one of the, well, we can get into disinfectants a little bit, but that's kind of my background. And, I've been retired from the punching a clock sort of ever since the end of 2014, enjoying, I had written this little book to add to my kind of accolades, but infection prevention for dummies. I don't know if it's showing up backwards or what, but that was during my time when I was president, and kind of the personal family story around that was that I was anxious whenever they asked me to write it about cleaning and disinfection and saving lives, because my daughter-in-law at the time was 37 years old, and the mother of my 3 grandchildren at the time. The youngest was 16 months, and she was real fit, trim, runner. She was working out in a gym, a healthcare facility. But anyway, she was trained for Iron Woman competition, and she got an infection in this part of her hand from lifting weights or whatever. Turned out that was MRSA and MRSA, and became a bloodstream infection. She was dead in 8 weeks. And that was from something that was supposed to be healthy. And so it has affected our family ever since. And so that's why I think that, we need to be serious about the role that we play in keeping the public safe. And so it's sad, but I learned something from that, and I take my job much more seriously. And when you say what am I passionate about, it's saving lives.
And, and thank you for sharing that personal story with us. It means a lot. I will tell you, my brush with MRSA luckily had a happier ending. I'm so sorry. My mother is a long-term diabetic and lost her foot to the disease. And while hospitalized for that process, they were trying to save her foot at the time. And in part of that surgery where they put all the pins and the wires and the halos and that whole thing, she got a MRSA infection while in the hospital. And luckily for us her in the situation, they were already amputating and doing things and taking things away. So they were able to contain it before it hit her bloodstream, and and she was okay. But man, was that a scary brush with especially my mother was a nurse by trade, so I knew what was coming if they didn't manage that. And it was your family's tragic ending, and I think it. I've been in the cleaning industry for decades, but it certainly put a period under that exclamation point of just how critical our role as cleaners are. We all take for granted this hygienic world that we live in, that you can just go to a hospital and get treated and come home in one piece, not thinking about down the hall, this guy's infected with this guy's infected with that. Everyone's
Right.
moving from room to room all day. And we just
Right.
take for granted that somehow magically that's all just handled somewhere magically by somebody. And I'll be fine while I'm here and I'll come home in one piece. And that wasn't the case for most of human history. Interacting with healthcare professionals used to be more deadly than whatever it was you're trying to get saved from for most of human history, till we started to really understand infection control. And we haven't really gotten good at it till somewhat recently. And even then, we're still learning. I think it's so important to advocate to fellow professionals that we've gotten cavalier because we're so used to living in this sanitary world, especially those of us in more first world countries where we're like, yeah, we'll be fine. It's like, no, you need to hear the stories that this is deadly stuff, especially if we don't handle it right as pros. So thank you for being that advocate. And
From
I'm sorry you can't learn that way though.
From the cleaner's side of things too, is you want to make sure that you don't take something home to your family. And so you have to be very cognizant of how you do your job and how things, like I said, if you're just taking off your gloves and you don't wash your hands, those gloves are not impervious to little pinholes. And, so anyway, it is about protecting others, but it's also about protecting yourself and your family so that you don't take something home. And, back during COVID, we saw so many staff members in these senior care facilities. Half of the fatalities were staff members. And, so that is sad. And at the same time, it was a terrible way to learn about how a virus like we experience is, I wouldn't say so easily transmitted, but how unprepared we were for it. And I'm an advocate for training. I'm not saying training because I believe we train 2 or 4-legged animals and we educate 2-legged animals, although my 4-legged animals train me pretty well. 2 dogs, and they train me pretty well. But anyway, it's educating, and it's about how important what we do, and it's the why behind what we do. And once you understand the why, then you can connect the dots about you use this on this, and this is how you do it. But too often we just jump in and here's the keys, and see you at break time. And, so, the green stuff is for that and the blue stuff is for that. And, we don't put enough emphasis on education, and it's about how things get passed around and how you protect yourself, you protect your others. And, I get tired of people saying, well, anybody can clean toilets and mop floors. Why do we have to pay them anything more than, $12 an hour? And I say, they ought to be making $30 an hour
Right there.
because they are infection preventionists, and they're not not custodians, not maids. They're not, whatever you want to call them. They're infection preventionists, and that's their number one job.
And thank you for literally everything you just said in that string of sentences. Like, I want to put them billboards. I wish I could, but with a megaphone. First and foremost, the teaching the whys of cleaning. That was one of my personal passions when I worked at Made Pro's residential cleaning franchise. I built one of the first LMS systems, learning management systems, within the residential cleaning world, where it's a fully interactive, integrated system where you went through 20 courses over 8 hours of learning, is bilingual, an interactive computer system to teach the whys of residential cleaning, not just the house. Everything
Right.
else that I looked for in the industry, because originally I didn't want to have to build this thing. It was expensive to build. But everything we found was these ridiculous DVDs of do this, don't do that. The green stuff's for this, the blue stuff's for that, like you described, and never why. Why am I using the green stuff? Why am I using the blue stuff? What happens if I use the green stuff on where the blue
Right.
stuff goes? Like, just they never bothered because they never respected the intelligence of the person learning. Like you said, they were training them like a dog rather than educating them like a professional. And it made me mad. And I said, there's got to be better out here. I can't find it, so I'm making it. One of the things that came back over and over when we made the system, I put a survey at the end. I didn't think anyone would fill it out, but people filled it out with their little thumbs, paragraphs. And a lot of our cleaners, English wasn't necessarily their first language, but they took the time to write me paragraphs about no one's ever bothered to teach me like this before. I learned so much. Thank you for respecting us. I mean, the people wrote paragraphs to say they were touched that someone actually finally gave a crud enough to educate them on what they're doing. And, like you said, we're infection preventionists. That's true in, or not just maids. We are just maids, and that's important too. Whether it's in houses or it's in commercial sites or it's in hospitals, professional cleaners are moving from site to site all week long. And if they are not properly educated, I love your phrasing, on the ins and outs of their job, especially around infection, they can be Typhoid Mary, bringing everything from house to house all week long, clueless the fact that they're hurting their customers more than they're helping, and meaning well, working their butts off, and absolutely being a walking disaster if no one takes their job seriously. So thank you for everything you just said there. I think there's such a big issue of a lack of respect.
And I think that part of that lack of respect is that, we don't have an internationally or even a nationally recognized certification for those frontline cleaners. And, I think that we really do need that. We have companies, chemical companies, and that have a training program. If you buy their products, you get their training program. And, but that is a biased way of viewing education. And, I'm surprised at how many people come up to me and, first of all, with the book, I have people who have been in the business for 30 years or longer, and they said, finally, somebody simplified it for us to put into, 42 pages or whatever, the whys behind what we do, but also condensing it into the important elements of what we do. And I just think that until we get some sort of a certification program that is not talking about products, but keeping things generic and, just so that people understand the difference between cleaning and sanitizing and disinfecting. And so those key elements that they ought to know, and how things get transmitted from surfaces to hands, and you scratch your eye or you rub your nose or your mouth, and you've just introduced whatever was on your hands now into your body, and that's how we make ourselves sick with not having proper hand hygiene, but those clean hands should be touching clean surfaces. And so, pardon the pun, but they go hand in hand, the surfaces and the cleaning. And so, anyway, I think that we need to bring the cleaners out of the shadows and into the bright lights of the importance of their job roles. And even the term janitor goes back to Janus, which was one of the Roman gods. And, he was the keeper of the keys. And, and you think about custodians with their big ring of keys. And
I never knew that. You just educated me today.
It goes back to Janus, and that he was one of the Roman gods, and but he was the keeper of the house, and so the house where the gods lived, he was kind of the keeper of that house, and he had all the keys. But so we have some deep backgrounds, and we need not be ashamed of what we do. And you asked me how I got into the business, and I've done these classes with people in our job roles of supervisors and managers and housekeeping schools and hospitals and what have you. And I asked how many of you got into the business because you wanted to get in the business, and hardly anybody raised their hand. I showed up for work, I did my job, I didn't cause trouble, and then they handed me the keys. And, so nothing prepared them for that. And then I asked the next question: how many of you would like your child to follow in your footsteps? And no one.
And that is it. Thank you for bringing that up, because that's something that breaks my heart so badly. Is we continue, even in 2023, we're trying so hard, but we continue to create such a lack of respect for this work that even people within it still carry the stigma and, tell their kids, oh, I want better for you. And it's like, what's better than saving people's lives? Cleaners, whether you're in a commercial space or a residential space or healthcare, we're saving lives. We're keeping grandmas either having to go to the nursing home, or when they're there, we're keeping them healthy longer. We're allowing people time back with their family. We're saving rocky marriages. We're giving people the time and space that they need to research and design that next new iPhone, that next new thing we want. That happens because someone's taking care of their domestic space.
Right.
That office space, that science lab, or the next cool thing you want to be discovered is being cleaned by cleaning staff that ensure that lab test goes properly. And if they don't do their job right, they don't find the cure to your heart disease. People don't get how literally integral we are to everything they care about. And then we're sitting there with our heads down going, I got here because I didn't plan on it, and now I'm in it, and I'm excellent at it, but I still don't have enough pride to say, I want my kids to be part of this, because we still haven't made this job something that people can hold their head up and make a living wage and be proud of. And yes, me and you both, we're not done yet. We got work to do. And I think your comment about it starts with creating a independent source of education. Oh my gosh, yes. And that's something that I'm starting to see some of the organizations do, like ISSA and ARCSI are trying to get into it and try to start creating those independent tools. I think there could be more. I think they could be more polished. I think the hard part is the money does come from the manufacturers. So like you said, once everyone's sponsoring it, there's a little bit of, well, we got to mention, Shine Away, sponsored, whatever. And here I am, microfiber wholesale. I get it. But I think there's a way for us all to figure out how to find the funds somewhere, and maybe give, everyone their chance to say sponsored by, microfiber wholesale or whoever somehow, but still make the content meaningful. Because I think what you spot on is nobody understands cleaning science and how it all works. Even honestly, I think it's one of those things that could be taught in schools. I've said this time and again that we spend all this time trying to make STEM exciting and interesting for children in schools, but there's no cleaning chemistry discussions at all. And it blows my mind as I watch my own young children going through school, and the teachers are trying to find all these creative ways to show different chemistry and physics and other topics. And it's like, oh my God, cleaning covers them all. And I could actually make people so much more educated on biology and germ transfer and chemistry and chemical reactions and physics and how they and heat and and dissolving chemicals. Like, there's so many things I could teach through cleaning and actually end up with humans that can shop the grocery store shelves more effectively. I think there's so much hogwash that gets sold out there. I'm sure you see it, and it drives you as nuts as it does me when you're scrolling online and people are selling these products that are absolute jokes. But people fall for it because no one has ever taught them what actually is going on in their soap bottle and why it works and why it doesn't work. And so when they see these ads, they're like, that sounds great. I can totally use this to do whatever. It's like, no, that defies the laws of physics. That's not going to happen. But you don't know that if no one's educated you. So I love your mission there.
Well, I think that, one of the things that I feel like we miss in this business is that, back during COVID, we were in what I call hygiene theater, gone from the front of the stores now is the hand sanitizers and the disinfectants. And, it was just like, I got tired of people wearing masks down below their nose or down on their chin, and we were told we had to wear these masks, and no one told us how to wear them, and that you shouldn't wear them for a month. The outside of the mask is dirty, and they've got one mask that they've worn, and it's just loaded with whatever they're breathing in and out. And so I think that, we disinfected surfaces that weren't used to being disinfected as frequent as we did, and we ruined a lot of surfaces. I was at a Lowe's, the self-checkout kiosk, and there's a big lettered sign on there warning their staff not to spray disinfectant on the electronics and to spray it on the cloth and wipe it. And so I think that we ruined a lot of things, and we gave the public some false sense of security. When I was at, Target store, and there's like 8 checkout places, kiosk in there, and there's this 18-year-old over there with one cloth and a spray bottle, and as soon as someone would step away from the kiosk, he'd go over there and spray it and wipe it, and then he'd use the same cloth for the next one, the next one, the next one. All you're doing is spreading things from one to the other. And I see this in restaurants. They have one bucket, they have one cloth, and
that one nasty red bucket. Oh my God, the red bucket. Oh, I see that red bucket and I run.
And they're just spreading things that they don't understand. They think that the disinfectant's going to kill it. We need to do a better job of soil removal, because I think that with a good cleaner and a good microfiber cloth, that we can remove 98 to 99% of the soil from a surface, and with the soil goes the bad guys. And then the disinfectant, you can use XYZ disinfectant, but it's going to have a much better chance of working now that it's not having to be affected by the soil on the surface.
I'm going to double underline this for anyone watching, because I think this is something that drives me bonkers that people don't get. Disinfectants don't penetrate soils. And this is something people don't get. They think they can take a dirty surface and spray it with disinfectant, and somehow it's going to magically soak through all the dirt and the body oils and the junk and find all the germs hidden in the poop. And it's just not gonna. All that dirt, all that body oil, all that soil acts as a little umbrella. And that stupid germ is sitting there going, I'm singing in the rain, happy as a clam, as you're spraying half a bottle of Tilex on it, but you didn't get rid of the dirt. And you're absolutely right. A proper, high quality microfiber towel or whatever you're using to wipe off the majority of the soil, and then use the disinfectant to kill whatever you didn't get. That's disinfection. That's safety. Spraying down. I saw, during the COVID pandemic, so many bad habits of people just spraying nasty things, and they weren't even wiping them.
Well, it's not just damaging surfaces, Melissa. Wherever I look at, the disinfectants that people were using, and there was after the schools went back to, or some of the states restarted schools earlier than others did. And so in the state of Indiana, post COVID, they did a survey of the teachers that were having to disinfect their classrooms. And some of these were, kindergarten, first graders, and they were having to wipe their desk off several times during the day. And they were, these little kids weren't wearing gloves, to put disinfectants on things. And they were just handed disinfectant wipes. And the teachers were saying that no one trained them on what they're using or how to use it. Teachers were going home at the end of the day and having a headache from breathing these disinfectants in a classroom because there's no, windows to open in many of these classrooms. And some of them were suffering the effects that whenever, they would go home for the weekend and everything would clear up, and then as soon as they walked back in the classroom, they got the headaches from breathing these disinfectants. And so, a lot of offices were not open at the time, but since they have opened, then I think that we have continued to use these disinfectants on surfaces that used to just get cleaned. And we disinfect bathrooms and maybe drinking fountains or doorknobs or whatever. But to use a wholesale kind of disinfectant is very hazardous to the occupants of those rooms. And in this case, in Indiana, it was small children. And so we don't ever want to go through that again.
Absolutely. And I think, you bring home such an important point, which is that um, when it comes to cleaning, as I was saying before, I'm convinced there's a gap in cleaning knowledge in the populace at large that really should be being filled at the school level. I really am convinced that that's where it starts, where people just don't have a basic understanding of the chemistry they're being asked to interact with on a daily basis. And so, there's these hazard warnings on the back of the bottles that everyone's learned to sort of just ignore. And, they don't understand, well, why am I being told to ventilate? Why am I being told to worry about my eyes? I need this now, so I'm just going to use it. And why am I getting headaches? Because they told you to ventilate because this is bad for you. It kills germs. It also isn't great for you either. And it doesn't mean to vilify chemicals, because I think the reaction we got was people got angry in the wrong place. There was a surge of frustration with the scientists and the chemicals. Chemicals are evil, and scientists are evil, and all that jazz kicked in, rather than what's evil is no one bothered to educate you on how to use this stuff safely, and threw you to the wolves saying, good luck, keep these little kindergartners from getting sick. Here's a bucks tub of Clorox, good luck.
You're right.
And the bad guys in that story weren't Clorox. It was your administrators who decided to throw you back in there without training you on how to keep the kids safe and you safe, and fix the windows so you can ventilate, and all the things that were involved in making that a safe environment for you to go back to school. And
Yeah.
I think
And I
for
think
our
that part of it was, the EPA, well, not the EPA, but the CDC was giving these mixed messages about what we should be doing to clean classrooms and to make them, safe for the students to come back. And yeah, they had to wear masks and what have you. But, what I said about mask, if you're wearing a mask and you go to the market and you smell fish, then it is not a good mask. And
that
they're finding out that, if you can smell something through it like that, then you're not filtering out the tiny virus. A virus is so tiny that, if you were to say that, if a bacteria, something the size, if you put it into proportion, if you had the state of California, you put a basketball in the middle of the state, that would represent a bacteria. But a a
bacteria in
virus next to
California.
the basketball is like a, like a pinhead. And so, we had these masks that may have been okay for bacteria, but they weren't good for viruses, and even the N95s that. But anyway, it was a tragic what happened, and I don't think that we're ready for the next one. And these pandemics are getting closer together, and the last one was maybe H1N1, the swine flu, back in the early 90s, and here this happened, in 2020 or 2019, 2020. And so they're getting closer together. And when you can get on a plane across the ocean and be in this country within hours, we've seen the horror movies about how that virus, spread on the plane from, coughing and sneezing and all that. But it's too important. The public's health is too important. And also that, we have to have disinfectants for that next thing, that we don't have to wait to get on the list at the EPA, that now they have one for new and emerging pathogens. And so chemical manufacturers, disinfectant manufacturers should be going for that registration with the EPA, because that will get us ready for the next pandemic. But then, disinfectant is one of the things that we need to know about. But really, it's about education, as we've been talking about, and how things get spread around.
Taking it, sort of, I think a lot of people are, over the pandemic, even if the pandemic isn't over us. But the reality is, whether it's a pandemic or not, you know, people get sick pre-pandemic, during pandemic, post-pandemic too. Neurovirus was always hanging out, and
Yeah.
that was never fun. And we get all excited in the news and the media when
Right.
it's like it's gonna kill you, but it can also just ruin your week and make you really miserable. And that stuff matters too. So, like, I think there's an important discussion to be had about prepping for the next, oh my gosh, scary pandemic. But there's also just a discussion about, we're doing this because it's the right thing to do, because germs are in our lives on the daily, regardless
Right.
of this pandemic or not. And as you mentioned before, a wee bit of poo can make someone's day awfully miserable, and that poop's been with us since the dawn of time, and it ain't going anywhere anytime soon. So making sure our staffs know how to properly clean and keep from cross contaminating between facilities and properties and rooms, and how to actually properly clean a surface, then disinfectant, that all that stuff was always important. We didn't need a deadly disease to remind us. And now that we've theoretically got that kind of under control, we still got all the rest of them hanging out going, I'm still important too. I can still make your day awful. We gotta, we gotta look at this as, it's always been important. And I'm glad that
Right.
the public's finally recognizing it, but we as professionals need to hold each other accountable that we gotta be on our A game.
Yeah, I think we let down our guard whenever the CDC came out and said, well, it's not transmitted on surfaces, it's transmitted in the air. And so we said, oh, then we don't need to disinfect anymore. And, so we've always, like you said, we always have these other pathogens that can make people sick or kill them. And, one of the things that I advocate for, and this is my little
What is that?
I'm here to tell you that one pinhead size of fecal matter on a surface can transmit C. diff, E. coli, these fecal borne pathogens. And, we need to get rid of this idea that we pre clean surfaces, that the soil is visible. Who is looking for a pinhead size piece of fecal matter on a surface? I say that we pre clean everything and then apply the disinfectant. But we we have depended on disinfectants to kill the little boogers when we ought to be removing them. And if you capture them in that microfiber cloth and you use clean cloth for different surfaces, And what's I hear people say, well, microfibers are expensive, and I say, not if you train your staff right. That cloth actually has 8 different sides to it, and that you don't just wring it out and then just start wiping with it. You have to fold it, refold it, and you got 8 surfaces on that cloth. And so what is good about microfiber is that it traps and holds it, and it gets released in the wash cycle. And so we need to get rid of that term, clean when visibly soiled, and just pre-clean everything.
Thank you. So sorry, I'm so glad we're recording this because again, this is one of those ones that will put on a billboard. And thank you for the poop hat because now everyone's gonna want. And I'm gonna go get my own poop hat. And I'm gonna wear it on every show I can from now on. I'm gonna say Darrell's poop hat because it's gonna now be your hat. So just to restate for the public, in case you're watching this, because he said something that you need to hear, you can get sick from a pinhead of poo. That's what he was trying to be. Little joke with the hat there. One pinhead. And when you're cleaning quickly, you do not see one pinhead. You're not looking, going, oh, that looks clean enough. I'll just disinfect it, wipe,
Right,
walk
right.
away. That's not how that works. You need to thoroughly clean things so you are sure the microfiber has lifted and trapped as much soil as possible off that surface, and then let the disinfectant kill whatever remains. This idea that I can spray down dirty things is just a lie. The idea that I can just tell looking at it, well, it looks clean enough, spray and walk away is a lie. We need to get in the habit. Obviously, I'm biased because I do use microfiber, but microfiber is the darling of professional cleaning for a reason. It's not just because it was new tech and cool. It literally does something that no other material does, which is the friction of the fibers locks and holds onto, as he described, it holds on to dirt and germs in a way that cotton can't. If you were to look at a microfiber under a microscope versus cotton, that big cotton fiber, not only is it massive, it's kind of smooth. So when dirt gets in there and lodged in that fiber, through the water of just the soap, dirt will fall back out. EPA testing showed that cotton can only hold like 60% of whatever it's lifting off, and a good third of it falls out over time as you're using that material to clean. Versus microfiber was able to grab some 99% or whatever it was of the dirt and germs without dropping it, because that shredded tiny fibers create so much friction and locking in that space that the germs literally get lodged in there, and it's literally has to be washed out in the laundry to get those fibers and germs and dirt out. And people don't get the difference. They're like, it's a towel. It's a towel. I put some disinfectant on it. It'll be fine. It's like, no, if you're not using the right stuff, you're dropping all those germs and poo and everything else right back down.
And not all microfibers are created equal. And
That,
what you buy at the Sam's store, it says microfiber on the outside, but it ain't microfiber. It may be cotton and microfiber, quaternary ammonium compounds, which probably make up 60% of the disinfectants out there. Cotton cloths will those active ingredients in the quats get bound up in the cotton in a
yeah,
cotton cloth. And within 2 to 3 minutes, if you put cotton cloths like you're using old washcloths that are retired, or terry cloth towels, within minutes, the active ingredients in that quat goes from, if it says 600 parts per million is effective, within minutes it's down to 300 and then 200, and then you're off label, and you're using that product in a manner that is inconsistent with its label, and you might as well be using water to try to disinfect with.
that's education. By the way, for everyone hearing you, we always talk about microfiber as being so critical to modern cleaning. And obviously, we sound biased because we make really good microfiber. So, of course, we're going to talk about it. But there's the science right there of people don't realize, and I don't even think I knew to that level, that I knew that cotton was bad for quats. I didn't understand the chemistry behind it there. The fact that it actually bonds and reduces the amount of active quat in the water, that's huge. I always just said cleaning with cotton towels is nasty because they don't clean well and they drop a lot of soil. I didn't literally know that they bonded with the disinfectants. That's awful. Thank you
Those
for
those active ingredients in, the because you can get a quat test kit. You can get them from your distributor if you're buying quats from them, because if you set up that bucket of water and you use the test strips and it says 600 parts per million, yep, that's what the label says. You add your cloths to that or your mops to that, and then check it in about 3 minutes. And if it's anything less than 600, then you're using it off label, and
that.
that's a violation of federal law to use it off
Wow.
label. And the other thing, we talked a little bit earlier about soil on surfaces. If you read that product's label, it'll say in the presence of 5% soil. We're talking about disinfectants now, and that's the test for 5% soil. Now, if you take a white paper towel and just wet it with water and you wipe it across the surface, pre-clean, it it hasn't been cleaned yet, and it turns up any other shade other than white, you've got more than 5% soil load.
Mm.
And so you're already off label if you are not removing the soil from the surface. People say, well, I've got a one-step cleaning and disinfectant. And yeah, it does a better job of cleaning that surface, but I believe that your disinfectant is still fighting the soil that is going to be left behind on that surface. And so I I want to re-emphasize the necessity of pre-cleaning surfaces. And one of the things that we talked about is microfibers. And you know, a microfiber is just a delivery tool for the cleaner or for the disinfectant. It's just like that bottle with a trigger sprayer on top of it. That's a delivery tool for the disinfectant. The cloth is, if it's not microfiber, but if it is microfiber, guess what? It is going to scrape that surface. The tiny fibers of the microfiber, it actually acts like a squeegee on that surface. And whereas the cotton will go over the top of it because the cotton is so porous that it just kind of goes over the top. The microfiber is actually scraping that surface. And one of the things that we haven't talked about is the biofilm that sits on that surface. That disinfectants will not kill biofilm, and biofilm is this thick matrix of that protects the bacteria and the viruses and all the nasty stuff are protected in this thick shell of biofilm. And we don't talk anything in this business about removing biofilm from a surface. Microfiber is one of those tools. And, the other one is, a good old fashioned scrub brush. And, and I was teaching a class one time of infection preventionists. And I said, we need to use elbow grease when we clean. And one young lady in the back of the room raised her hand. She says, where do I buy that? And I said, your grandma didn't teach you how to use elbow grease when you clean something? We can't just spray and wipe, what I call spray and pray. Uh, I think we need to do a better job of getting after the soil and getting aggressive with the microfiber and a little bit of effort. And we would come up with a much healthier surface when you're done.
Absolutely. And I think it's something that, particularly for home consumers that are watching this, that people don't get is, again, we've been taught that chemistry is magic, that somehow if you spray this disinfectant on your bathroom and your showers, it just magically soaks through everything and kills germs and does everything for you, and spray and walk away, I'll be fine. That's not reality. And particularly with biofilm, I think one of the things that people don't get is, if a disinfectant is sitting on top of that slime, so for the newer cleaner out there that's not well educated yet, or the home consumer, biofilm is that like slimy viscous feeling that you feel when you go in your bathroom and your shower, that it doesn't, when you feel something really dry and clean and flat and like it's clean, but when you feel anything slipperier than that, that's usually biofilm. And that is not penetrable by most soaps and chemicals. So if I put a soap on there, it's gonna sit on it and slurp off it, but you actually need mechanical action. The act of rubbing it off with microfiber or scrubbing it off with the back of your sponge or a scrub brush or some sort of tool to literally tear apart that
Breaks
goo
it.
and rip it up so that the soap and surfactants can cling onto it, lift it up, and take it away. If it's kept in a full form, it's just gonna chill. It ain't gonna lift. So you've got to actually mechanically rip it apart to get it to go away. And a lot of people are like, well, my bathroom looks clean. It's white enough. I can just, spray this daily shower cleaner thing and it'll be fine. It's like, no, it needs something to tear up that biofilm if you want to get to actually down to the surface and get things clean. Um, and you talked about your background in the Surface Institute. I think particularly for those cleaning outside of healthcare, this is a real issue in that we're encouraging less and less cleanable surfaces every year. I mean, I'm sure you fight fight it in your home life where people watch HGTV and whatever else, and the designers, God love them, aren't thinking about pandemics. They're thinking about aesthetics, and they're like, "Oh, look, we're gonna, put down this, lovely Brazilian nutwood floor and this, marble counters and this, whatever, surfaces they've selected that are so hard to maintain. There's,
And
we're picking less and less maintainable surfaces with every passing year, and particularly for professionals being asked to clean in offices and home spaces outside of hospitals. Even commercial spaces like offices are getting less and less cleanable with every passing year as people expect these high-end office spaces to kind of reflect the design trends of the home, and they're bringing in more and more impractical surfaces to these hotels and these offices,
yeah,
and it puts the cleaner in a real quandary where, like you said, some of these surfaces really can't tolerate frequent disinfection and frequent scrubbing, and it's puts us in a bind. I would love your take on how to best support these professional cleaners in spaces where they don't have control over the surfaces, where they've been, here my customer has gotten, this, patinaed bronze sink and, marble counters, and what the heck do I do? And they're in hard water country and I'm trying to maintain their home and their showers looking like heck. Help. What do
yeah.
we say to those people?
Well, back to disinfectants, and usually those are tested in the presence of so many parts per million of hardness of water. And if you live in an area of the country where you have hard water and you have the client doesn't have a water softener system and you're dealing with hard water, then you know it is making your disinfectant less effective as well. That's another element of disinfectants whenever they get registered for use as a disinfectant. If I want Darrell's disinfectant out there, then I'm making it in my bathtub at home, and I want to get it registered. And so there's an AOAC test that the EPA does not test disinfectants, but this is getting kind of in the weeds. But if Darrell has to go to a licensed EPA testing facility, so I want it tested in the presence of 400 parts per million water hardness. Well, we cannot control the water that is in these buildings and homes and businesses. So we have to be aware of the water hardness. We have to be aware of the soil that's on a surface. And people that have told me that they are more worried about the contact time. It says on the label here it's 2 minutes for this organism and it's 5 minutes for this organism, and oh, there's 10 minutes for this one. Then you have to use the highest one. So you have to use the 10-minute one because you don't know what's on the surface. And
Mm-hmm.
so if you're going to kill it, then you have to use the highest contact time. So people are going into these public restrooms and just using their disinfectant and spraying it on the sinks, the urinals, the toilets, and all over, and they haven't removed the soil. So the disinfectant is just sitting there on top of the soil, and then it's not killing anything because the soil is greater than the 5% on that label. So we have to understand the disinfectants and how to properly use them. But cleaning in itself, like I said, with the right microfiber, the right cleaning product can remove 98% of the soil, 99%, and you can use ATP. Now, here's where I want to get into it, Melissa, with you, is that we need to start measuring what we do. If you can't improve something, if you don't measure it, so we have to use ATP to show what
Translate for our consumers, ATP, what does it stand for?
adenosine triphosphate. And adenosine is something that is in all living matter, except for viruses. It's in fungus, mold, and bacteria, but not viruses. But anyway, it is in all living organisms, that are on a surface. So if you take the ATP test and you get these results in 30 seconds. So, if you swab a surface, do it right, and you test it and say you're getting a count of 3,000 on that surface, that's pretty soiled. Now, after you clean it, if I have tried it myself, but to take a microfiber and water and clean that surface with some elbow grease, and then take your ATP, and it may be down to 60, 50.
Mhm.
Anything that under 200, probably 100 is the real target, but anything below 100 is probably clean. And you can get it clean with just, like I said, the right microfiber and water. But
I'm putting you on an ad, baby. I'm telling you, like, because people don't hear me on this. They're like, "Oh, well, I just use whatever cotton towels. I use whatever microfiber they got at the grocery store." And it's like, no, you don't understand. When you use a towel, it's just a delivery system, like you said.
right,
When you use a cotton towel or a rag, but when you use microfiber, it's part of the cleaning act. It is part of the soil removal
it's
process.
the
It is part of
mechanical
the
action.
disinfection. It is actually part of what gets things clean. Microfiber is cotton's a delivery tool. It brings the soap and it kind of sops up the soap. Microfiber actually removes soil on its own with
Yes.
just water, and nobody gets that difference. And so, thank you for, like, again, for home consumers, for our professional consumers. If you're still out there with those huck towels, you are removing a layer of cleaning. You're now relying on soap, and as you just pointed out earlier, soap, if it's in the presence of too much soil, if it's in the presence of too much water hardness, isn't performing the way you think it is.
Yes.
The big underline is it's all about mechanical action, wiping, microfiber, cleaning and removing the soils. That is the only thing you can actually count on, is you and what you use to wipe with. That chemistry might work for you depending on how dirty it is and how hard the water is. But I know, did I use a high quality towel and did I wipe this thing clean? That I can count on.
And you can measure,
and you
and
can measure it.
and you can prove that what you're doing is effective. And we can't improve things that we don't measure, so we need to measure cleanliness. and,
Amen.
and it should be evidence based. What we do should be evidence based. I tried the product. It got the surface numbers down to an acceptable level, so the product works. The process works. If we're using microfiber and we're using that product on a surface, applying it and scraping that soil off the surface, then we get better numbers. And those are evidence based. We don't say, I think it's clean. I've got the measurements. I can show you that it's clean. And so we need to get back to cleaning and less of the disinfecting. But if we provide, even the CDC says that cleaning in itself does not disinfect a surface. But here's the caveat: disinfectants do not clean the surface. And so they're saying that it's a two-step process: clean, then disinfect. EPA says that, CDC says that, and I say
Yeah, yeah, thank you. And I trust you more with both of them. I'm just kidding. I love my EPA and CDC. They're doing their job. But, that's the thing I think people don't really get. And I think it's so important you just said it is that, it's like trying to call it a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, but I didn't have the jelly today. Oh, well, like, no, I'm sorry. It's not a PB&J until you got the peanut butter and the jelly. Cleaning and disinfection have to be done together, or you don't get to call it a clean and disinfected surface. You don't
right,
just get to dump disinfectant on something dirty or clean it without disinfecting. You got to do both if you actually want a hygienic result. And I think that there's been so much drama and, frankly, trauma around the past several years that I know everyone's like sick of hearing about germ control and infection, and I feel you, but germs don't care that we're sick of them. They're still here. And, as a professional, you're going to have to push through that feeling of being sick of it and continue to educate yourself. And part of that is understanding that we don't get to be, frankly, lazy like the home consumer and go, oh, well, I guess they might get their own family sick, but you get 20, 30, 40, 50 families sick. If you're in a hospital, you get hundreds of people sick. Depending on the facility that you're in charge of, you're ruining lots of people's day when you do it wrong. And we've got to make sure we understand the actual procedures and science of it has to be a cleaned surface. Our thing we can count on most is removing as much soil as we can, and then disinfecting whatever remains as a backup, not as the thing we rely on. And the
right.
more and more we educate clean professionals, the safer world we all function in. And I hope that that education also helps us all justify to everybody why these cleaners are technical workers. They are tradespeople that deserve respect and living wage. Back to the beginning of our conversation, I think when people understand the responsibility these cleaners are taking on, like you said, in the pandemic, a lot of these cleaners were the ones that took the hit for the
Yeah,
people they were caring for. They were the ones literally going home and sick and taking it to their families, trying to save everybody else. This is not a light duty job here. This is life and death stuff here. And we've got to educate our cleaners, but also give them enough respect to say you deserve the time for that education. And we deserve on job training and continued education and paying people enough that they want to stay long enough to get to that continuing education. When
right.
your staff is a rotating door and everyone's in and out in 6 months, you can't do ongoing education because you barely got past 101 and they're out the door. It all goes hand in hand.
Yeah, and I think back to the education, some employers say, well, what if I educate them and then they leave? They take the education with them. I say, well, worse is what if you don't educate them and they stay?
Stay. Yes. Say that again. I didn't want to talk over you. Say it again. Because, yes.
People say, well, if I educate them, then what if they leave? Then they take the education with them. And I say, well, worse is if they stay and you don't educate them. That is worse because they don't get the why of what they're doing. They just know how to do things and they do them to whatever someone showed them. But as leaders in the business, we can't educate them one time and say, well, check that box. We need to validate it. We need to do some observations, like you were saying earlier, when you were trying to get your education films out during COVID, and then the supervisor, the business owner, videoed their employees using the products and doing things and doing, whenever you saw the video, it was like, no, it's wrong. And so here's someone who is watching it and doesn't make that connection, but we have to do the observations to make sure that the education sticks, because too often we just hand them off to someone else. Well, Mary's been here for 3 years, and so she's going to train you. Well, Mary's already figured out the shortcuts. So then whenever she teaches the new person the shortcuts, then she'll make shortcuts to the shortcuts. And pretty soon you don't have anything that is valid. And so to keep it square, then you need to educate, but then you need to do some competency assessments as you go on. And every few months, you should work with Mary and watch how she does it and say, I'm the new employee. Show me how you do things, you know. And that's the way, the way that I educated whenever I was doing training is I would show them, I would tell them what I'm going to do, then I would show them how to do it and then do it for them. And then the next room I say, okay, now I'm the new employee. You tell me and you show me what you just saw in the other room. And that's the only way you know that it's stuck with them.
Absolutely. Inspect what you expect is what I always use, the phrase I always loved. And, you know, and I think what is so important, and just to underline it for anyone watching, is we know from adult education that people need constant retraining to eventually make something an integral part of their knowledge.
Right.
Show someone something once, it's going to go in one ear out the other. We know that. That's nothing to do with cleaners. That has to do with adult education and just how human brains work. We know this. So the idea that I'm going to throw on a DVD the first week of work and say, hey, watch this video for an hour while your eyes bleed, and
Right.
then go off and watch Sally for a half an hour, you're fine, see ya, and never train again, we know we were just doing it to legally cover our butts. They're not learning diddly for squat. And it comes back to that mentality of, I have to believe that my cleaners are worth educating. I have to believe that I can keep them long enough that it's worth investing in making them educated. And I have to believe that them being educated gets me a different level of results in my facility. That's the trifecta of belief there that we have to work on. If we continue to treat cleaning as this revolving door
Right.
occupation that I'm paying barely enough to get by, so everyone's in and out, then I'm not going to bother to educate you because I think you're out the door. And I'm going to say, well, I guess it doesn't matter. We've been living this way all this time because I've never actually experienced what a facility looks like with staff that stayed, that's educated, that feels respected, and is doing their best work. Once you see that, then go decide, is it worth doing A and B? But let's try it out first. I'm just saying, how about we, make an experiment of it? How about we just, respect the cleaners, educate them, and pay them well, and see how much happier we all are with spaces that are properly cared for. Just saying, it's a worth experiment.
And it's, to your point, Melissa, the most expensive thing you have as a business owner is a disengaged employee. And, having all those necessary parts, the education, the right tools, the right processes, all that gets you this far. But, it's the engaged employee who feels appreciated in that you've educated them, you've trained them, you've checked with them, you know what they deal with every day, and you're there running interference for them, and they know that you've got their back. That's the engaged employee who will go beyond. You create the environment where people feel motivated. No one can motivate me but me. And so I cannot motivate another person, but I can create the environment where they feel motivated. And if they say, well, this is my job, but oh, I see trash over here on the floor. Well, it doesn't have a name on it. You pick it up, and so they go the extra step. I know my job says this, but I did this, and it's better because I did it. But that's the engaged employee that is hard to put a dollar value on. But the most expensive part of your operation is the disengaged employee.
Honestly, I'm sticking that in a freaking bumper sticker. The most expensive part of your organization is the disengaged employee. Because Lord, I'll tell you, from my background, I worked in residential cleaning world, as I mentioned before, for Maid Pro residential cleaning franchise, some 300 plus locations, 5,000 maids, 25,000 plus recurring customers cross country for decades. And let me tell you, disengaged employees are expensive as beep. And I got to watch it, and I never had a phrase for it, and I'm stealing it because God, I wish I had that for all those conference calls I used to do. Because time and again, the stories of what we trashed came down to, it was trained on. We had a whole LMS system. I know I flipping built it, where we explained, don't do this and don't use it on that, and here's why. But if an employee just doesn't feel valued and doesn't care and doesn't want to be here, you can fire hose them with training. It ain't going to matter. At go time, they're going to do whatever gets them out that door as fast as possible because they don't want to be here and they don't care and they don't think anyone cares about them. And that shortcut is what's going to trash something. And almost 90% of claims, occasionally it would be an employee that cared too much and would go above and beyond doing things they shouldn't because they cared. We get some of those sometimes. But 9 times out of 10, it was the employee just trying to skate out that's doing the quick and dirty, whatever they thought was going to help, and ends up trashing ridiculously expensive things because you never made them believe that it was worth them trying harder. And nothing about your paycheck or the way you treated them made them believe it was worth them trying harder. And you got what you paid for. I'm sorry. And I think it's so important for us as leaders in the industry to keep driving that message home of if you're frustrated with how your staff behaves, be frustrated with how you treat your staff that they think that's the way they need to behave because they think that's all that matters. If you don't like how people are not showing up on time and not doing the job right, what did you do to make them feel like they should? What changes about their job when they do it right? If the answer is nothing, then that's on you. you know
And back
um
to what we talked about earlier, Melissa, and I want to circle back to that. But during COVID, we called those frontline workers, heroes, and we held up signs for them and everything. And what I say, we told them they were heroes, but now we should pay them like they're heroes. And to put your money where your mouth is. But I believe unless we take care of those very rudimentary parts of that person's life, that person that's cleaning that hospital room and she's got 30 rooms today and she's worried about paying the rent this Friday.
yes.
And so she's not really focused because she doesn't want to be homeless again. And so we have to pay them like they're heroes, and give them the professionalism, and bring them, like I said, bring them out of the shadows and put them out in front and make them part of the staff that's around them that they're supporting, and they would feel more appreciated and more of a professional and do more of that engaged daily activities.
You said it spot on, and it's so true. We ask so much of our cleaning staff, and everyone you'll hear right now is talking about, oh, I can't find workers, I can't find workers. This is impossible. Employee shortage both in food service and in cleaning right now. Everyone's like, I can't find good workers. It's like because they finally had it when you told them you're essential, you're miracle workers. I gave you the little signs in the front
Yeah.
lawn and all that nonsense. But then you're like, and get back to work. Sorry, you can't make rent. My bad. And it's like at a certain point, the hypocrisy just smacks you in the face, and you go, you know what? You literally don't believe that, and I'm just out, either
Here's an
mentally or
idea for
physically.
you, Melissa, is that we're talking about people that are worried about paying the rent. What if we start paying them every day instead of every 2 weeks? And you know that that would help them, I think, budget their money a little bit better. But anyway, I think that there are strategies out there for retaining people. But we're you know during COVID and even now, for new people coming in the door, we're paying bonuses to. Well, what about a bonus for the people who stayed? You know,
Yes.
who stayed through it thick and thin, and because you're going to give them a sign-on bonus, now they're going to go to work for you and quit the stuffing bag burgers in a bag in a drive-through window because you're going to pay them a sign-on bonus. And what about the people who stayed through the thick and the thin, and take care of them before you take care of some newbie.
And honestly, it's all important on all sides. And I understand, trying to create incentives so you can replenish your staff if you're understaffed. But at the same time, there's got to be a plan after that hiring bonus.
Yeah.
Everyone's all about like the sizzle and the steak in the beginning. And then this employee's just here. Like you said, I didn't bother educating them because I didn't think they were going to stay. God love them, they stayed, and now they don't know what they're doing, and they're here, and you're ignoring them, and they barely know if they're going to make rent, and they don't trust you, and then you're going, why isn't things going right? I don't know. Maybe those are interconnected somehow. Maybe, I don't know. And it's that disconnect that I think we're all gonna have to work through, both in industry and with our customers. I think in industry, we've got to have a they come to Jesus, with each other about, if we don't start respecting ourselves and respecting our workers, then our customers are never going to respect us. It's got to come from in here
Right.
first. The calls coming from inside the house. We've got to start as a group believing that we deserve a living wage, rather than, I'm going to pay you this wage I know is too small daily. How about I just pay you enough that you can actually have something in the bank left over for next week, so you're not panicking? We could do that too. We have to, like, internally say, yep, these people are worth it, and they're worth educating. We're worth thinking this is a long-term position, not something you just careen through and we crank. We have to believe that that's possible first internally, and then we get to go externally to our facility, accountants, and our home consumers, and our customers that we're bidding to, and saying, no, that's what this costs now if you want staff that sticks.
Right.
And I'm quoting you, I'm not going to quote you the lowball quote anymore. That was pre-COVID. We're here, that it's a brand new day. I'm quoting you the legit quote of what it takes for me to bring you a staff that is here longer than 6 months. I could quote you less, but then I'm going to be bringing you staff that's miserable, underpaid, and looking for the next job. They're going to treat your house exactly like that's going to go, because, as you can tell, it doesn't sound very good. They're going to rotate, and then you're going to go, why is my house not look right? Why does my facility not look right? Why are my patients still getting sick? And be mad. And it's like, well, you got what you paid for. You know, we got to first internally as a group decide, this is a trade that deserves education, that deserves respect and a living wage. And then we got to turn to everyone else outside and say, this is what it costs to get things cleaned the way you actually want it, with staff you can trust to be independent and do things right the first time. And this is the real cost of it. And I'm sorry if it's not what you expected, but here we are. It's 2023, and give us the money so we can keep that staff here and educate them and let them be proud enough of their job that when they get asked, like you said earlier, do you want your kids to get into cleaning? Say, yeah, sure. It's a really fulfilling job, and I'm saving lives. Not, oh God, like, it's all full circle.
Right. And by creating that environment where people feel engaged and they feel appreciated and they feel like they're in the know, guess what? They become your recruiters out there. And they'll tell their cousin that's looking for a job, come work over here. We have fun. We know what we're doing. We're cleaning the place up. And when you go home at night, you might be tired, but you can look back and see clean, and you know that the people coming to work the next day are going to appreciate their work environment, because you have made it not just about appearances, but it's for health sakes. That we need to quit cleaning for appearance and start cleaning for health.
Yes, and I think, it's so important to, know, to put a button on. You know, it's easy to talk about pay, because pay is important, but it's beyond pay. It's the respect. It's the
Yes.
environment. It's the culture. I can throw money at the problem, but if I'm a jerk to work for, no one's staying.
Right. Exactly.
It's again like that paper and jelly. I can have the paycheck and the culture. They got to go together if you want the employees to stick. And at the end of the day, if we do it right, workers should be our strongest recruiting arm. They
Yeah.
should be telling everyone at their church and their cousins and whatever, you got to come work here. It's amazing. I feel so valued here. I'm helping people.
Exactly.
I'm saving lives. I'm enjoying this work. And yeah, it's physical, but it's that satisfying kind of physical.
Yes.
Cleaning, when it's done right, is a satisfying, enjoying job. If I've been given, crappy products that don't work, it's frustrating as heck, and it's exhausting. I'm gonna go home tired and sore and poorly. If I haven't been trained to do it right, I'm gonna hate this job. But if I've been trained to do it right, with quality tools that work right the first time, and how to
Yes.
stand properly, so I have the ergonomics, yeah, I'll be tired because it's still physical work, but it's that good satisfying tired where you're like, look what I did, and I'm tired, but I still feel okay. We
Yes.
can do that, but you have to believe that the people that are doing it deserve to go home feeling that way. And just,
Amen.
and that it's funny. When I talk to people about our products, I know don't mean to sound like a promo, but um, you know, I was a microfiber wholesale client before I was an employee. I bought from them for Miami Pro franchise for over 10 years. And the reason I insisted, and I had a lot of franchisees push back sometimes of like, these are expensive. I can go to Sam's Club. And I hear you, but you try cleaning with these towels and you try cleaning with the garbage that you're giving. Try it and tell me you're not working harder. And if you honestly can't admit I'm working harder, that's 78 hours a day, 5 days a week, 22 days a month, 52 weeks a year. It adds up. And people just don't get like, oh, well, I tried it. The supervisor, I tried it once on this counter. I guess it doesn't pick up as fast, but whatever. It's like, no, no, you do that for a week straight with this thing that ain't picking up and the soap that ain't cutting through, and feel how exhausted you are by Friday and wonder why your employees are online looking for a different job. I mean, come on. And it's that. It's you don't get to walk 2 feet in someone's shoes. Walk a mile and then tell them they don't deserve insoles. Like, you know, um,
Yeah.
I think we have as the industry do it to ourselves the most though. Like I see, I don't know about you if you're on social media, but I see a lot of our fellow cleaners will be on these chat rooms and groups being like, "Oh well, we just get whatever Huck towels and dollar store chemicals. We're fine. We just put our back into it with some elbow grease, whatever." And it's like we have no respect for ourselves, and we
Right.
don't think we deserve better. We gotta start like believing that we as an industry deserve better and treating each other that way. And like you said, having enough belief in the science to like test surfaces and say, no, look, when I buy stuff that works, my employees are getting a different level of result for my client. And I
Yes.
need to show them that and say, hey, just so you understand, this is what you're paying the extra money for, is employees that are engaged, that love their work, that feel respected, that are going home vaguely rested and refreshed, and are getting you a better result because I invested in cleaning as like a legitimate thing that is necessary. And no one's going with it. They're just like, I'm the lowest bidder. It's like, no, no. Let's stop undercutting each other and start raising everyone's expectations. And the more we can do that, I think we as an industry will be able to all command better pricing and more living wages. And,
I agree. Well, just to put a ribbon around this, I think that I know this for a fact that an engaged employee, given the right education, the right tools, the right training, and the right amount of time to do the job, can prevent more infections than a room full of doctors can cure.
mm, yes, I'm putting that on a bumper sticker too. I'm keeping you, just so for everyone knows, there's going to be a part 2 and 3 and 4. I'm just going to let you talk because everything you say is a quote. Like, oh my gosh, it's so uh, it's so true. It's so true. That we don't recognize just how many patients that cleaner touches over the course of the day if they're doing it wrong.
It's the
That,
accident that never happened.
yes, yes.
And you talked about your mother and the MRSA getting it in the hospital. And that's the patient's number one fear going into the hospital is they're going to get something that they didn't go in with. And they know people that have done that and died, or they were disabled, or they lost a leg to this flesh-eating bacteria that they got in the hospital. And so that's just an admission that we're not doing as good as we should. And, cleaning is not the end all be all. It's not the silver bullet that stops these infections, but it is something that needs to be considered and given an equal platform with some of the other things that we do in hospitals and in society to prevent infections and transmissions of disease. And so we need to have that level platform where we bring something to the game, and we provide something that no one else can do, and that is a healthy environment for people to get well and go home, or to learn, to educate in schools, or to work in an office. Is, if by providing that healthy environment that we've done our jobs and we can be proud of what we're doing.
On that note, that is where I'm ending this show, because that's it right there. There's the bow. So thank you. This has been a wonderful interview. For everyone watching, I hope you watched it to the end, because he had shared so many bumper sticker worthy quotes. You need to take to your supervisor tomorrow to say we need to change our act around here. For everyone watching, please like, follow, and subscribe. We bring content like this all the time, and I assure you, I'm getting Darrell back at some point, because he's now my new best friend. I love everything you said in this interview, and I'm staying in touch with you. And we've got to be there to lift each other up and bring industry experts like this out in the forefront to advocate for believing in professional cleaning, believing in what we do, and understanding that proper education and proper tools make a difference. So,
Yes.
like, subscribe, follow. I'm going to bring you all the cleaning education I can from my background and from other industry experts, but that only works if you're tuned in. So make sure you come back for the next episode. Darrell, thank you so much again, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode.